This is a true horror story from a medical college girls' hostel in Karachi. Warning: if you are planning to watch this video with your family, please be aware that it contains sensitive content. What happened during those nights was beyond anything I could have never imagined, and it still harms me to this day. My name is Nancy, and this is the story of the scariest days and nights of my life. It all begins shortly after I cleared my entrance exam and got admission to a medical college in Karachi. Like most students, I was excited and nervous at the same time. Moving into the girls' hostel marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one that I would soon wish had never began. The hostel was an old building, filled with long corridors and dimly lit hallways. It was my third or fourth night. Something terrifying happened. It was around midnight, and my roommates and I were trying to settle in for the night. Suddenly we heard the blood-curdling scream outside our room. At first we thought it was a prank, perhaps some senior girls trying to scare us freshers. But as the screams became louder and more intense, we began to realize something was very wrong. We hurried out of the room and saw a group of girls gathered around another girl who was screaming uncontrollably. She kept pointing towards the bathroom, her voice trembling with fear as she muttered incoherently about how she had fainted. To our horror, we found another girl laying unconscious on the bathroom floor. That one who had been screaming had witnessed her faint and was in shock herself. The whole scene was chaotic, and we were all terrified. Eventually, when screaming stopped, an unconscious girl regained her senses, but none of us knew what had actually happened. The whole hostel returned to a fragile state of normalcy, though a lingering unease hung in the air. A few days later, I met the girl who had fainted, and what she told me was beyond belief. She explained that she had been washing her hands after using the washroom. Then she caught a glimpse of something horrifying. In the mirror, there standing behind her was a man. He had glowing eyes, his skin dark and shadowy, and he was perched on the top of a plastic dustbin. Strangely, the dustbin didn't bend or crack under his weight, as if he was weightless, but what terrified her the most was what he was doing. He was collecting used sanitary pads with his bare hands. The image was not only terrifying, but also disgusting. The sight of him, combined with the horror of what he was doing, made her collapse to the floor in shock. Where she fainted, I was scared, but had not experienced anything myself yet. A few days later, something even stranger happened. I was in hostel corridor, talking to my family on the phone, when one of my friends suddenly froze. Her eyes were wide, staring at something behind me. She pointed toward the bathroom. I turned around and my blood ran cold. There on the wall was a shadow. No physical body, just a shadow floating in, and there was no one there to cast it. Moving on its own, the shadow hovered for a few moments before slowly fading away. Terrified, we just rushed back to our room, locking the door behind us. But the horror didn't stop there. One night, the hostel experienced a power outage. It was the middle of the summer, and the room were unbearably hot. So we all stepped out in the corridor to catch some air. That's when we saw a figure in the distance, standing about 10 or 12 meters away. She looked like one of our hostel servants, standing in the darkness. At the far end of the corridor, we called out to her asking if she was okay, but she didn't respond. Instead, she stood there eerily silent. Then, to our absolute shock, she started cutting her hair. We stared in disbelief, not understanding what was happening. Just as we were about to approach her, we heard footsteps from behind. Turning around, we saw the real servant coming up the stairs from the ground floor. When we looked back to where the figure had been standing, she was gone. The entity, or whatever it was, had simply vanished into thin air. After that night, things only got worse. Every night we saw a shadow crawling along the walls. Near the bathroom, it slittered across the room and disappeared into the next one. It seemed as though it was moving from room to room, haunting the girls who stayed there. The final straw came when one of my friends woke up, screaming in the middle of the night. She was trembling, her face paled with fear. She told us that something had frozen her body, rendering her unable to move. She could feel something, or someone touching her inappropriately, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. In her dream, she had seen an entity, an evil presence looming over her. The next day, we made the decision to leave the hostel. We couldn't take it anymore. Whatever haunted that place, we didn't want to face it for another night. To this day, the medical college will end. As hostels still exist, some say that hunting continue. For me, those terrifying days are something I will never forget.